girl after my own heart. I like my luxury hotels too, but the difference is, you see, I don't have a government who I'm possibly voting on paying for it. Think about that. All while simultaneously, this is some new sound that just came into us of Jasmine Crockett saying she's got to have increased security because, she's gearing up for her big Senate campaign. She's going to take on Ted Cruz. And hey, she needs those Ritz-Carlton hotels and those Marriott points, right? Here's Jazzy telling us why.
It is laughable that I would have one of these ridiculous networks reach out to my staff inquiring about the fact that I pay for security out of my campaign account. Now, mind you, in my mind, I do think that that's a good question. I think that's a question for maybe Speaker Johnson about why it is that he's not protecting members of Congress. I think that it's really a good question as to why a member of Congress needs to pay for security out of money that they go and raise, instead of focusing on making sure that they use that money to educate voters about why it is that their candidacy matters. I do think that it does people like me a disservice.
Oh, it does you a disservice because, American taxpayers, they need to be the ones paying for all your security, right? Oh, Jazz, I'm sorry. You know what? It just doesn't work. When you're sitting there in one breath telling us we got to defund the police, and then in the next breath, you're saying, I need more money for my fancy hotels and my security. It doesn't work, okay? I've traveled throughout Latin America throughout my career. I told you guys I started my first gig was actually at Goldman Sachs. We were trading emerging debt markets in those sort of Wild West places like Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And throughout my reporting career, I actually have done a lot in Latin America. I was, oddly, the only person who spoke Spanish. Again, the Irish girl who speaks Spanish. I have a way with languages. At one time, I was actually quite decent in German, too. Another story for another day. But, I wanted to be an opera singer, and you kind of needed to know all these languages. So Spanish came pretty easily to me, and I wound up doing a ton of coverage down in Latin America because nobody could speak Spanish, and nobody really cared about those stories, but I had a background in it. And being in Tegucigalpa in Honduras once, I remember thinking, this is amazing because there's these beautiful homes that were all behind these giant fences with all kinds of security cameras and armed guards, like carrying AK-47s. I mean, armed guards, right? And I can't imagine, I'm thinking like, how do you live in a place like this? I go into my hotel, which was like a nice hotel in Tegucigalpa. And guess what? There's armed guards right outside, right? Because it is that dangerous a place. And so if you're going to live there, you actually have to have all this security. And I worry that the U.S., under the Jasmine Crockett's of the world, is actually going increasingly in that direction, where she wants to defund the police, but she's going to have all the armed guards she wants. She's going to spend all the money she wants on her transportation. She's going to spend $50,000 on security expenses, all while simultaneously saying we must defund the police. So this is a problem. She's going to say, how dare anybody make a dime, all while simultaneously apparently taking money for quote unquote business trips, to luxury hotels. The Waldorf Astoria, $17,500 in Qatar, paid for by Qatar. Looks like a nice place. And no, that's not a cruise ship. That is the hotel. Gorgeous, right? Nice little beach there you got for yourself. Jazzy. So you see, this never, ever works out. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over again. I'm like, why do we have to live through this? We already know the answer. Been there, done that, and yet this is what they're putting us through. I want to go to some new sound right now. Jeffries is out speaking, saying that somehow they're still like really worked up about healthcare, right? They're really, really worked up about this, and they think that we've got to fix this. I get it, but like, don't forget, guys, don't forget whose healthcare this is, right? Before we go to Jeffries, I just want to remind you of that. Like, who came up with this healthcare plan, in all seriousness? I think we know exactly who came up with all this healthcare, and we're paying the price ever since, right? I mean, here is one Ana Navarro, who was a conservative who's now like a crazy anti-Trumper liberal who also has a gig on The View, albeit maybe not for long, because I'm telling you, FCC's watching. Here she is speaking on CNN. You see, she's trying to diversify her portfolio with her media companies, and she gets caught by Scott Jennings because she doesn't realize this messed up healthcare situation is all because of one man and one man only, his name, Barack Hussein Obama.
Going to hear.
They don't want her to play it? Is that it? Here we go. We're going to try again. Ladies and gentlemen, Ana Navarro.
Going to hear horrible stories. Mm-hmm. People are not going to be able to afford their insurance. I don't think even with subsidies, they're going to be able to afford the premiums that are hiking up 100, 200, 300%.
Wasn't Obamacare supposed to fix that?
When people, no, well, not without the universal. I mean, there's
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah,
Affordable was the first word.
The Republicans have been chipping away at the ACA, and I think this is going to be the death of the ACA, but it's also going to be the death of some Americans who don't go get screenings, who don't get diagnosed early enough in order to get treatment, who go in and instead of being stage 1 cancer are going to be stage 4 cancer. And we're going to hear horrible stories because Americans are going to choose to drop health insurance that they cannot afford. And we as a country have got to figure this issue out.
Okay, but I do think it's because Obama led us down this primrose path, right? I mean, this is fundamentally the issue that we're having here. You know, Dems, finally cave. I'm just changing out what we call our lower third in the business. Shutdown ending as a result, and now their party's imploding. And this is what, is the result, frankly, of really, really bad economic policy. And when you have the likes of Barack Obama creating this nonsense, this is where you wind up. And it's kind of messy, right? Like, it's kind of messy. Let's go to, if we can stand him for 2 seconds, the guy who's about to lose his job, Hakeem Jeffries, trying to somehow say that, we're going to work this all out on the healthcare front. Good luck, buddy. Good luck.
Schumer took this about 6 weeks too far. In other words.
Okay. Well, I know you didn't want to watch him anyway. That's me doing you a favor. That's the Gremlins doing you a favor. Hakeem Jeffries saying, we're committed. We're going to keep it going. We're going to fix this. And we're all like, yeah, right. You know what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. You see, the Republicans are in charge now. This is Donald Trump's turf. Get used to it. I'm sorry. It just is the way it is. And you know what? If you were in charge, they'd have to be negotiating with you. You think about Bill Clinton. He didn't have the House and he didn't have the Senate, right? So he had to work with Newt Gingrich. Well, guess what? Donald Trump has both the House and the Senate. So you guys are going to have to work with him. And if you're going to continue to sit there and stomp your feet and cover your ears like a spoiled little child that you really are, that is the Democrat Party today, then I'm sorry, you're not going to get anywhere. So this is on you. You wanted to extend this. Think about that, guys. They were willing to allow for people to not have their SNAP benefits. I mean, I was looking at it, I was saying, hey, this is kind of nice. The government shut down, and who noticed? I mean, one lady noticed. I played this in my shorts feed for you. She started going on and on about how her eyebrow technician was suffering because they weren't seeing as much business because of the shutdown. Because you got to have your priorities. You got to get those eyebrows done, right? I mean, please. I don't think anybody really noticed, other than this woman and her eyebrow technician, that there was that big of a hit to the overall economy. Yes, on an individual level, it's very hard to watch and hard to see. And it's very sad that the Democrats who say that they care about those people with the SNAP benefits really don't care. Right? They really don't care. You know what? I do care. And, I think the president cares. He was looking to find the money. Remember that? He was trying to find the money and find some sort of loophole to be able to not only pay our members of the military, but also pay the SNAP benefits. I mean, it was really kind of admirable. And I will say that he is unlike most politicians out there. And I know him, and I will tell you this, he's got an empathy that doesn't typically exist in Washington. And people don't give him enough credit for that. Speaking of which, weird segue, but I take my health very seriously, right? Which means I care about what I put in my body. And I like to know that when I turn over the back of a package on any of the supplements that I may take, that I understand the ingredients. I understand the ingredients at Balance of Nature, because they got 31 ingredients, and you're going to understand them too when you take a look. We love Balance of Nature here on the show. So many of you actually already have it. So this is actually for new offers. I have to be careful about that. It's new offers only. Use code word Trish, 35% off. Plus you get a fiber and spice supplement as well. You get a money back guarantee. You get free shipping, like all this good stuff. And you know that you're doing the right thing for yourself, because you're getting some of those nutrients that you might, otherwise not have time, frankly. I mean, just think of the chopping alone, right? 31 different fruits and vegetables. That's a lot. So fruits and veggies, they have tons of things though. I would just say on the website, if you go to balanceofnature.com, just take a look at all of it, because there's many, many different things that you can choose from, not just this alone. It's worth sort of mentioning as a follow-up at this moment that there is an indictment expected of one John Brennan. That's perhaps as we head, here we are midweek, we thought it might come as early as Monday, as we learned that the DOJ has been issuing as many as 30 subpoenas. These are all to Obama-related folks. This is all going back in time a bit, but you got to piece it all together, right? So you got to think about what happened in 2016 vis-a-vis Russia. That was Hillary Clinton. Originally, interestingly enough, it was opposition research that was commissioned by Republicans. Okay, so Republicans initially were trying to thwart off the threat of Donald Trump. And so they had gone out and they had hired Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele to do this. And then it turned out, well, he was going to be their candidate. So they didn't want this opposition research anymore, right? Like, it's a hot potato. But Fusion GPS is like, well, we've been working on this thing. We got to sell it to someone. And so they approached the Hillary Clinton team, and her law firm went out and did the deal with Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS hiring Christopher Steele, who hired some additional people, contacting some of his, former Russian spy contacts, because he was a defunct old spy hack from Great Britain. And so the next thing you know, they're writing this piece of crapola, okay? Like crapola. I don't know how else you would describe it. I read it and was like, come on. Like, seriously, you think anybody's going to believe this as like intel? Like, this is actually written by anybody who is not writing for the National Enquirer? Like, this is totally opposition research, right? Designed to be fed to some 2-bit reporter, of which apparently there are a lot of, that would run with it. And that's exactly what they did and how it went down. And so the rest of the story and how that all unfolded. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe more people need to know about it. We've now learned that, in fact, they're moving forward with these subpoenas, and that there's about 30 of them going out. It's a big deal. This is Brennan at a recent event.
You misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that. Yes, you don't know. Comey knew.
So that was John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, trying to say that, you know what,
All the hallmarks.
we actually were not running we never called this disinformation. We just said it was an information influence campaign. But I do beg to differ, because we've talked about the letter. The letter was actually put in Politico. And what is the headline in Politico? Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation, dozens of former intel officials say. By the way, I realize I'm like jumping around, right? Because you got a bunch of these intel things going on, like all at once. So it's not just the dossier, which now Lisa Page and Peter Strzok and likely Brennan and some other key people are. Brennan's indictment could actually be coming. I mean, we know that the subpoenas are going out, but there could be a lot more on the way. And as Dan Bongino has said, like, no one's effectively safe here. Just because you're friends with somebody, it does not mean that you're going to be safe. The deep state, as you know it, effectively is no more. So long as this president is in charge, with Kash Patel at the FBI, Dan assisting him there. So Lisa and Peter, they're under fire right now. These are people that, by the way, not only did they lose their jobs kind of, pretty unceremoniously, but then they went and turned around and sued, and they got money from taxpayers, from the U.S. government, because they lost their job. But it's like, guys, like, were you doing your job, or were you just political ops for the Obama administration? And that's where we got to draw the line. You cannot have political operatives in the so-called deep state. The people that are in government should be agnostic. And we know they were anything but, right? We know that. I know that. You know that. Anyway, this story will live on. I will tell you that all of these people in the Obama intel operation are indeed, as they should be, in a high risk scenario, and there will be pain to come. Thank you to all the regulars here on the channel, to Leslie, to Cat Crazy, to David Lorenzo, looking at you there in the chat. They were lovebirds, peace of my mind. I'm telling you, they were total lovebirds, right? Like, they were in love with each other. They had a whole thing going on. I mean, it's funny how being anti-Trump somehow like brings them together, right? We're going to save the world against Trump, and that everybody gets high off of that with love. Oh my goodness. Anyway, if you have not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do. I'm live here every day. We do have a good crowd. We got a great crowd here in the chat. As a piece of my mind was saying just yesterday, the chat is where it's at. So thank you for being here. Do subscribe, make a comment. Believe it or not, people say, Trish, is that really you responding in the comments? Yes, it is me. I don't have a big enough operation yet for it to be anybody other than me. And, there's kind of only one person, I think, that can channel me. Make sure the verified thing is on there, though, because sometimes people will try and take my picture and use it. Such is the world in which we live today. Anyway, I do respond to the comments, and I like them, and I heart them, and I see them. So thank you for everything that you're doing to make this channel such a success. Remember, guys, subscribe, share, like. Go check it out on Spotify, too. I need love. Oh, my gosh. We got 15,500 subs. Not bad, right? We were like at 12,000 not too long ago. And you got to start somewhere. I realize it's not 1 million, but believe me, there was a day when we were struggling with 15K right here on the Trish Regan Show, which we started doing, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now, live every single day. And so thank you. Thank you for everything. I will see you right back here on the show tomorrow.